Hello, welcome to another Ask Wrexham podcast in which we try to answer your questions that you've thrown to us using the hashtag Ask Wrexham. That's ASKWXM, the clues in the title of the podcast, on Blue Sky or Twitter. You can use it, of course, to get in touch with us during the match as Andy, Mia and I are commentating, or if Lucy and I are commentating on the women's games. And yeah, we'll do our best to respond, and we'll also do our best to answer the ones that need a longer explanation on these podcasts. So, let's get straight to it, shall we? With an interesting one. Jim from Monticello says, every other team looks forward to a Wrexham game. They play harder, knowing that there will be more eyes on that game than any other. Our squad doesn't get juiced like that because they're used to the attention now. We need to find a new way to get juiced by Saturday. I'm assuming juiced means motivated. I'm scared of what it means if it isn't that. Right, I've said this before, so apologies if I'm repeating myself to any of you, but I was remember Kevin Wilkin, who was our manager in 2014-15, was manager of one of the smaller clubs in the top division of the National League, Nuneaton Borough. They were like a yo-yo team, they well under him, and that earned him the job at Wrexham. And he always said, yeah, for them it was a buzz. Going to Wrexham is great, especially at National League level, you know. And I'm really not intending to sound patronising saying this. I promise you, you know. But National League is an interesting level, a mixture of professional teams like Wrexham and some semi-pro teams, and a lot of teams that, you know, making a journey and were semi-pro traditionally. And so a lot of the stadia, as you'll have seen if you followed us a couple of years ago, are quite small, fairly basic. Again, no criticism. The stadium, as you'll talk about later, that fits the interest in the team. But having said that, it meant that coming to the racecourse, which was one of the biggest stadia you've ever seen in the National League, and of course the fact that it's got all that history behind it too, and it's an international stadium, you know, famous games have been played there, really gave them an extra boost. So that was definitely true. And no doubt the Wrexham name meant something when you're playing at home to them as well. It's a good scalp to have, although I would argue, you know, I mean, that's true, but it you know, should that affect your performance that much? The key thing is, now we're in the Football League, you would think that stadium argument is out of the question. I mean, we've been quite impressed, haven't we? Going to lovely new stadia, or fairly new stadia, like Reading and Bolton, you know, these Huddersfield, these impressive grounds. It's great to go. Historic places like Charlton, you know, we've been enjoying and getting back to going to them. They, you would think, are not going to be wound up more by coming to the racecourse, so that we throw in the second factor, which is the takeover. And that is where, if there's something to this, that's where that now is. It added something obviously when we were in the National League, but gosh, the amount of coverage that we get, if you beat us, you will be making headlines globally. That's just a fact, isn't it? You know, I mean, clickbait has a lot to answer for. So it is a big deal. I mean, you see with some of the sort of passive-aggressive and sometimes just outright aggressive reactions you get from some supporters, that people, I think, resent us, a bit jealous because we've been fortunate. As I've said many times, I really strongly don't think that's the majority. I think the vast majority of football fans are delighted it's happened to us. They've seen what we've been through. We share a kinship. Look what happened at Wycombe, for example. And they appreciate, well done, you got lucky. And after the awful things that we've experienced, it's nice for us to get a bit of luck. So I think that's the majority opinion. But yeah, online is a different, much more febrile environment, isn't it? Let's be honest with you. So, what is it? Febrile. It's febrile, isn't it? Poisonous. That's what I'm trying to say. So you get that sense. And yeah, it's a feather in your cap if you beat a team that's big, and we're big by association with our owners and by the direction of travel we've got. Does it make a difference? A few people have said after a good performance against Wrexham, when Wrexham were playing away, have afterwards said, "Oh, that's the best we played this season," and certainly, I know that opinion was expressed in the boardroom at Reading after the match. So yeah, it seems to happen a bit, absolutely. But hey, if we're going to be an ambitious club, we've got to live with that, haven't we? The idea of us getting wound up, I personally strongly feel you don't have to question this team's attitude at all. You know, I mean, this team get wound up. This team are incredibly committed. You know, we got promoted last season because when push came to shove in the running, they pulled together superbly. Don't think there's any question this team completely has its head on and is working. The thing is, the trouble with sport in general is that the other side are entitled to do good stuff too, aren't they? And sometimes that happens. And the other problem with sport, of course, is humans aren't robots, so players naturally vary their performance levels. And I've always felt, in many ways, the difference between a top level player and a player, say, in League One is not necessarily their ability to do something, it's the ability to do that thing consistently. You know, you get players who will look really good but then have that one mistake in them, whether it's one a match or one every few matches, whereas you look at Premier League players of the same style and they don't make those mistakes. So I think that there's all these different factors coming in, but I don't question our attitude and enthusiasm. I wouldn't at all. I think there's, you know, these guys, goodness me, look at how they work. You know, at the Reading game, and we will focus a bit on the Reading game, so I didn't get a chance to do one of these podcasts last week, and there were some good ones from around that, so I'm sort of focusing on some issues that came from that today. But if you look at it, I mean, yeah, the performance wasn't there. The effort most certainly was, though, wasn't it? You know, so that's sport for you. It's not predictable. Right, now then, Steve, this is also talking about how we finished the game against Reading. Steve saying, I like Longman on the left and Barnett on the right, and Jarvis replying it was the one bonus from this game. Well, yeah, of course, Longman came on fairly late on, and I have two observations on this. One is, I also like that. I think it looks good. Longman has really settled in well, hasn't he? You know, the attention was grabbed by Smith and Rodriguez when we brought them in, but Longman, it looks like he could be a player who makes a significant impact for us. It's interesting, I mean, since that match we've won up at Wycombe. Barnett wasn't fit for that match because of that heavy fall he took on Tuesday, so yeah, we didn't see it at Wycombe, and it'll be interesting, won't it? Parkinson seems to fancy Longman on the right. He's given him games ahead of Barnett. There's a certain attraction, isn't there, about having these two wing backs who are aggressive front foot, and as Longman's now showing, reliable defensively too. I think Barnett went through a little process when he first joined us, and I think Longman's gone through it as well, of just tightening up the defensive part of the game, because both of them played higher at the pitch normally. And again, people talk about Parkinson being negative, which I don't get. Parkinson's not negative. He wants to play wingers as wing backs. So he's looking to get at teams, isn't he? So yes, there's something attractive about it, but I've got to add a rider here, which is that at that late point in the game, and we will get to this subject as well, we were taking huge risks and we'd made tactical changes to alter our lineup, and you know, therefore, because Reading then went back into their shell, we were able to get Longman and Barnett on the ball high up the pitch and get them running at the fullbacks consistently. If you start a game like that, I mean, I think we could do it. Don't get me wrong, but I think part of the reason it all looked so good was because it was attack against defence, wasn't it? And we were taking risks. If you remember, by then we'd gone to four at the back, but it wasn't really four at the back because Longman had clearly just been told, right, nominally you're a left back, but you're not. Stay up the pitch. Get at them, because we were taking risks. If you start a game like that, you get pulled apart pretty quickly, unless that player does miraculous things. So I think that, yes, I think it's a good and interesting and legitimate idea, but I think that it would look a little more conservative if we started with those two players as starting wing backs. with the condition that obviously, we do want, if it's going well, for those wing backs can hide the pitch in at the same time anyway. That's the whole point of the wing back system, really. If you play a flat back four, the two full backs either side, one of them can go up and the full back can tuck in, and you still got three at the back. With a three at the back system, and don't listen to people who say it's defensive, it can be, but it depends on what you do with it, what Parkinson does with it. We have three at the back, just as you would in a back four if one full back's up, but you can get both full backs up at the same time because you've got the three centre backs. So, I think it's legit. I'll be interested to see whether Parkinson fancies it when Barnett is fit. And this links in then to Rathbone's warming blankets question. So yet again, we turn on the gas with 10 minutes to go. Need to see this kind of drive for longer, like preferably from the kick-off. I get your points. I'm going to slightly disagree. And you should know how reluctant I am to disagree with anything associated with Ollie Rathbone. But here we go. I think, thinking back to what I said before, it's an extreme approach, and it's what Parkinson does when he thinks, right, okay, this isn't working, I've got to rip it up. I find it amusing people say he hasn't got a plan B. He's had a plan B, a very well established plan B from the start, which is he brings off a centre back, he goes to four at the back with a diamond in midfield. He'll often leave one of the full backs very high like he did with Longman, and we've essentially got three strikers, the two forwards and the player in behind, and wide players all trying to rip into the opposition. My argument is that that tactical alteration is what made us aggressive, plus the need to take risks, and it is a massive risk-taking formation, and that if you started like that, you couldn't really sustain it, and you'd be open to counter-attacks and could get really badly punished. The other thing, I suppose, of course, is that you're really wringing every last bit of energy out, trying to play super high tempo and really trying to put pressure on. And if you started the game like that, well, it'd be a risk, wouldn't it? I'm not saying it's not possible, but it would be an incredible risk. And, you could argue that that's the sort of football that, say, Jurgen Klopp looked to bring in at Liverpool. He talked about heavy metal football. It's a great phrase, that, isn't it? And the idea of just extreme energy and aggression from the start, getting in the other side's half, press really high up, don't let them settle, and play at a high tempo and transition quickly, hit at them quickly on the counter-attack. And, I've got to say, it's absolutely thrilling football to watch. I would also, though, say that while Klopp introduced this style of play to Liverpool, it was when he was able to refine it a bit and bring an element of control to it and vary when they played at 100 miles an hour and when they played with more control, that they actually started winning hand over fist and winning trophies. You could also argue they brought in Alisson, the best goalkeeper in the world, and Van Dijk, the best centre-back in the world, and that made a bit of a difference too. I wouldn't disagree with you. But I think there was a refinement of his approach which he undertook, because even he knew that if you're going to go hell for leather, you're going to give your fans some great days, you're going to have some amazing wins, but you're also going to have days where it backfires. And if you want an example of this, is it the year after they won the league, I think, where they went to Aston Villa with that high press and aggression. And the problem of doing that is you are going to leave opportunities for teams to counter-attack, especially if they have a bit of calm and quality on the ball, while Liverpool charging around and putting you under pressure. And in that game, Jack Grealish, who hadn't gone to City yet, was outstanding. Villa kept hitting them on the counter-attack with quality, and the champions lost 7-2, because that can happen. When you take risks, even if you're in a magnificent team like that Jurgen Klopp Liverpool team is, you're taking risks as part of your identity. If a team clicks and susses you out and finds the answers, you're in big trouble. It's not a conservative approach. So I'm not saying you couldn't have some variation of this frenzied end, but you're going to have to be able to ration it somehow, because obviously you're going to drain your energy pretty quickly. Cyclists talk about burning your matches. You've only got so many matches. Every attack you make burns a match. It's that sort of idea, I would argue. You could be on your knees in the second half. And how many times have we seen Wrexham, say, in the National League and in League Two? I don't think so much in League One, face a team who come at us and really go at us and show great energy, and they trouble us and we look poor in the first half. But as long as we keep our heads and keep in the game, in the second half they start to flag, and all of a sudden they're not getting as close to our players when we got the ball, and then we get a grip then and score the goals and win the match. Happened a lot in the National League, I would argue, where teams, it was a legitimate tactic, but we were good enough to hold them off and then punish them. By the way, the traditional plan B, which everyone's referring to really when they complain about us not having a plan B, is throw a centre-back up front, which we have seen teams do. Well, Peterborough did that, didn't they, when they beat us in the trophy? I've got to argue that generally it doesn't work. And if I can give an example of that, well, an explanation of it, if you've brought a team in to play a certain type of way, and it doesn't involve a big guy up front, why would it work when you suddenly throw a centre-back who's not a specialist striker up front and just suddenly start launching long balls to them? Because your whole personnel hasn't been recruited to play that way, and I would assume hasn't worked on it that much in training, because you wouldn't plan A to work. I've always thought, well, two things really. One is, if plan A doesn't work, try to execute plan A better. Try and look at why that's not working, because that's what you're working on day in, day out in the training ground. And secondly, I mean, if you do alter things, it doesn't have to be as dramatic as that. It can be a subtle little change. I mean, you'll often see people look at the player coming on or the player coming off and make very simplistic and specious conclusions about, oh look, he's brought a striker off and brought a midfielder, oh he's going defensive, or oh look, they threw at the back, they got more defensive, but they need to score. Like I said before, it's what you do with that formation, with that change. I always remember going back, 1990 World Cup, England were playing Ireland. England were expected to win the opening game. Ireland were winning 1-0. The England manager, who was all England managers become figures of fun with the English press. It's embarrassingly simplistic. The England manager, Bobby Robson, brought off a striker and brought on a midfielder, Steve McMahon, who played for Liverpool, very good midfielder. Of course, everyone goes insane. Oh my gosh, what's he doing? We're losing and he's brought off a striker. Yeah, they were losing because they couldn't get control of the ball. They bring in an extra midfielder, they've got an overload of extra men in the middle of the pitch. They start to keep the ball, they start to take it higher up the pitch, and they get the equaliser, and it works. And they play so much better with McMahon as the extra midfielder in there. Football's more subtle than just stick a big lad up front. Anyway, everyone complains that we hoof the ball, which I don't think is... I can see why they say it, but I don't think it's accurate the way that people put it. Well, what? So putting a centre back up there is going to make it better? We're going to play on the floor more, are we? I don't think so. There is though. I've got to add a codicil. I have seen it work spectacularly in a way that you don't normally see, and I need to ask about this on Saturday because it was Andy Morrell who did it. We played a playoff against Luton, and we were losing on aggregate. We needed 2 goals in the second half, and he went to the centre back up front, which he didn't normally do. So I think it was effective because I had a surprise element. He went incredibly early. There was about half an hour, 25 minutes left. Teams don't do that. They do it in the last 10 minutes, 5 minutes. When there's going into added time, teams don't do this much. And he went for it super early. But Mark Crichton, proper, big, huge centre-back, terrific in the air, nicknamed a beast. He put him up front, and Crichton set a goal up and caused all sorts of mayhem, and we just couldn't get that second goal, but he changed the dynamic completely. So I need to ask Andy about that. In what circumstances do you do it, and in what circumstances do you think, you know what, I'm going to do it super early? It was incredibly bold and it nearly worked. Okay, Janie Troll says, my son, who's very colourblind, just asked why Bolton, remember they played at the racecourse in green, are playing in almost exactly the same colour as Wrexham. Yeah, Wrexham, dark red, Bolton turned up in a dark green kit. Likewise, Dean Rogers 25 says, why are Bolton allowed to play in green with white shorts given our kit? So, white shorts from us as well. Anyone colourblind should sue Sky for a refund. their normal kit would be fine. Any clues? And there's another one here, and this was Reading, I think. Davis King asking, okay, probably touched on it, but why are we in our home kits? There's another kit question to come, but I'll just answer these ones first. Now, Dave, I'm going to quickly answer yours because there's a straightforward answer. People talk about home kit, away kit, third kit. In some ways, I'll go through the whole thing, but in some ways that's a misnomer. Really, it's home kit. It's first kit, second kit, third kit, if you will. And I would expect, and this is why we had those questions about Bolton, if there's no clash between the two team shirts, I would expect both teams to wear their home shirt. So Wrexham against Reading, for example, Reading in blue and white horizontal stripes. We call those hoops in Britain. I don't know if you call them in other parts of the world. And Wrexham in red. There's no clash. Red doesn't clash with blue and white at all, and so there's no need for us to wear an away kit, if you will. So when people talk about away kits, they mean the second kit. There's no compulsion for an away kit to be worn in an away match. I hope that makes sense. And also, I mean, you'll have noticed this, I'm sure, and this is what I'm getting to now, the rules on what you can wear and when. Our black and gold kits are officially our first, second and third kits, but in reality, if we can't wear red, we wear whatever we fancy. So, and it leads to all these sort of daft superstitious things. We don't get results in this shirt, we've got to wear the other one. And it's not just fans who say that, of course. The players and managers are just as guilty of it. But anyway, okay, now getting on to the issue of colour blindness and the rules. I will say first that belatedly over the last couple of years, the football authorities are starting to cotton on to the issue of colour blindness, and that's good news. And as I understand it, they will be bringing in regulation in the British competitions or English competitions to stiffen up the judgment on what kits clash and which don't. So that's really good news, and certainly clubs have been briefed on it. Whether they'll care, I don't know, because I can tell you there were people at the ground as well who were not impressed with Bolton suddenly wearing green when their first kit is white, so there's no clash. There's no reason for them not to wear their first kit. But the rules are this. That first kit, the home kit if you will, you must wear that for your home games. Okay? You're allowed one deviation a season. So you can have one home kit where you wear a special shirt or alter it. The norm is for teams to, if they don't have a special occasion, often certain Premier League teams do this. You watch the last game of the season, they'll change into next season's kit as an advert. Lower division teams often don't have that kit yet, so they can't do them. But yeah, sometimes Premier League teams will play the last game of the season in the new kit, and then they can try and sell the new kit over the summer and make extra money, or at least make money earlier. We've often done it for Gressford's Memorial game. So we'll have the Gressford's Memorial wheel, the icon, on our shirts and things like that. Or St David's Day, we did, didn't we, last season? Oh, by the way, many thanks to Geraint Parry, the club secretary. He knows everything about football and has memorised every handbook of every competition and can say them backwards, for helping me out with this, because I plied him for information when I saw these questions. So thank you to Geraint for this. Now, so home shirt must be worn for a home game. Away shirts, wait for it, in a football league you can pick wherever you want to wear. Anything at all. So Bolton, well, except you're supposed to avoid the clash. So quite how Bolton slipped under the net, because there's loads of bureaucracy behind football. They're going to have to submit their kits and what they're going to wear. So how they managed to slip through the net, I don't know. They clearly weren't showing any consideration for colourblind supporters. And yeah, tonally that's a very similar kit, even if it's a different colour. So yeah, not quite sure how they did this, but they did it, and they got for whatever reason it happened. But yes, away kits you can wear what you want as long as it doesn't clash, in theory. So I hope that explains that. There's one other nice one, this, which I must admit I didn't notice. Rathbone's warming blanket said that Max Cleworth, when I think that's the Reading game as well, still had the tags inside his shirt. Well, sometimes clubs have to make do amends. Sometimes you have to act quickly, and if there's some problem with the shirts, well, they've obviously forgotten to cut the tags off, haven't they? To give you an example of this, is great. This is. You may have noticed at Port Vale in the Virtue Trophy that we wore a sort of Man United kit. It was red shirts, black shorts, black socks, which is not our normal kit, but obviously is a combination of our normal kits: red shirt, black shorts, and black socks. Oh, and by the way, that's the other thing I learned. Once you've nominated your kits for the away games, or if necessary the home games, you can sort of rotate different parts of the kit, which is what we did there, isn't it? Third shirt, second shorts, second socks. So you can play around a little bit to avoid a clash. Now then, the reason we wore that at Port Vale isn't necessarily just that they were wearing white Port Vale, because we could have worn our black shirts, couldn't we, with the black kit? We could have worn our gold shirts. Either way, it would have worked. No, there's something much more mysterious than that. I'm going to take a sip of my coffee while you think about it. Muy delicioso. The reason is that you have to have the patches on the shoulders of the kit for the competition. So we have the Virtue Trophy patches. We played our group games, our first two group games, in red at home. We didn't particularly want to put patches on another set of shirts, which we'd probably only wear once. And it's not necessarily just a cost-cutting thing. It's that, what if you arrive at an away game and Phil Parkinson says, oh yeah, we rotate, like we saw in the virtual, we've rotated this team massively. I'm going to pop a young lad on the bench, a young lad who hasn't got a shirt. It's easier to have a full set done in red and then hope you can fiddle it around so that you can wear that shirt all the way through the run, which we did, rather than suddenly have to load up a new shirt, quickly stamp the names on and get them. That's probably what's happened with Cleworth. For some reason there's some issue with their shirts and they've had to quickly prepare a new one. They grabbed it out of the shop and they haven't realised that it's still got the tags on underneath. So yeah, sometimes things can happen, strange things like that. Football, it looks organised, but scratch underneath, and it's being held together by a small group of diligent people who have to run around when something unexpected is sprung on them. Trust me. Now then, My Cat's Mom has asked a cracking question, which we addressed in the match, but I wanted to come back to it just to clarify a few things, and also for those who didn't see it. Novice question: no, it is not, because I can promise you people who think they know everything about football don't know the answer, or disagree on it at least. When is it permitted to challenge the keeper for the ball? Right, now, the rules are quite straightforward. Once the goalie's got control of the ball, you can't challenge him. This is a major change in the rules that happens in the 60s. Amazingly, before then, you could smash into a goalkeeper, and if the ball crossed the line, it's your goal, even if you didn't touch it. So when teams would cross the ball high into the goal mouth, and then big strikers would come in, and they'd be looking to make contact with the keeper as often as with the ball, because if they can somehow get that ball to win, it counts, and it goes to them. Dixie Dean famously scored the most goals ever in an English season. Legendary player for Everton, scored 60 goals in the season, and a lot of it was like that. He didn't even touch the ball. He just slammed into the goalkeeper. So the rules were changed, and now if the goalie's got the ball under control, you can't challenge him. Now, of course, this is where we now get into the semantics of it all. What does under control mean? There's a sort of schoolyard rule. It's not an official rule. It's a schoolyard rule. 2 hands on the ball, keeper's got it. 1 hand on the ball, yeah, they haven't. Or 1 hand pushing it onto the ground, they haven't. That's not the rule. It is a subjective thing. If I got the ball, I'm a goalkeeper, and I decide to bounce it, is a player allowed to lunge in and try and get it before it comes up in my hands? Have I got it under control and I'm under control so I am bouncing it? Or have I lost control and I've let go of it? Well, the rules don't specify with that. But the real issue, of course, is when there's a foul on the goalkeeper, which we've seen recently go either way. So there was a game, wasn't there, a home game? Mine's gone. Rotherham, was it? Owen O'Connell jumps with the keeper, the ball drops loose, O'Connell scores, and the goal is disallowed. And for me, it was Bolton, I think, wasn't it? For me, that's a foul. Now, you got to remember, I used to be a goalkeeper. Not a good goalkeeper, but a goalkeeper. And so I have a certain perspective, which is not the majority perspective, is it? Let's be honest. The majority of footballers are outfield players. And in the media, people will not agree with what I'm about to say. You'll see an awful lot of this tired old cliche, goalkeepers are overprotected, which they'll say before they see the replay. And sometimes they have to admit, oh, he did get punched in the back of the head, actually. Reluctantly, they admit it anyway. My argument would be, if you're jumping and you got your hands on the ball, the slightest touch of your arm is a foul. Because if you think about it, that ball's in a fixed position, your hands have got to be either side in a fixed position to have control of it. And even if you just slightly nudged, if that hand moves a fraction, you've lost control of the ball. The ball's dropping. Therefore, you've been fouled. You've been interfered with. So that Owen O'Connell one was 100% correct. O'Connell made contact with the keeper with his and hit his arm and knocked the ball out of his hands. It's a foul. Physical contact with the body, I think you've got to view that in terms of just in general the intent of the player, and a foul anywhere on the pitch, you know, what was actually going on there. As a goalkeeper, I should be robust. You know, I've got to make a decision. If I can see contact coming and I think it'll knock it out of my hands, and it's just normal body to body contact, there's no flailing arms or anything like that. For me, a flailing arm is going to be a foul no matter what, pretty much. Then I've got to decide to punch it rather than catch it, because that's coming, and if I don't think I can hold on to it, I've got to do something different. I've got to adjust. Which is why sometimes you see people criticising goalkeepers for punching when they think they could have caught it. Well, they might have seen something in the corner of their eye and thought, right, incoming, I'm just getting rid of this, I'm not going to try and catch it. And, you know, sometimes they're wrong. Sometimes that challenge doesn't come and people criticise them. My attitude is, as long as you get enough distance on it, better to do that than to try and catch something and then get walloped. But it's not a foul and it's a goal. So I hope I'm making sense so far. Contact in the arms, to me, is a foul. End of. Contact on the body, I think you've got to really judge it in terms of how much it affected the goalkeeper and how much the keeper should really be expected to be able to hang on to it. Now, the goalkeeper who was fouled by O'Connell was also involved in a very famous incident at the same end at the Kop, which went against us again, which I think was wrong. And this was in the playoffs 2019, I want to say. We lost to Eastleigh after extra time, but we scored a goal in normal time, which was disallowed. I think it was a mistake by the referee, in all honesty. Sean Pearson, legendary Warrior centre-back, jumps with that goalkeeper, same goalkeeper who was on loan at Eastleigh. The keeper catches it. Pearson's jumping behind him. Pearson makes contact with his head, the very top of his head. And it's more, as he's jumping, his hands, I would say, rests on his head. There's very little contact. It's not like they didn't bang him in the head, which would be a foul, obviously. The keeper drops it. Wrexham score, and the keeper immediately goes mad, and the Eastleigh defenders and the referee disallows it. For me, a tap on the head. This comes into the you should be robust category. If a little tap on the arm, like I said, I think that's a foul every time. Every time. A tap on the head can be quite continental. No, a tap on the head is, it's subjective, and for me there wasn't anywhere near enough contact to disallow it. It didn't knock him off balance. It didn't affect his arms. It didn't affect his viewers because he caught it, pretty much. So for me, that was an error by the goalkeeper in letting it drop, and the goal should have stood. So it is a grey area, and I would argue I'm probably not in sync with the norm, because people normally complain goalkeepers aren't protected until it's theirs, and then they're horrified when a foul is not given in their benefit. Ron Wilk, this is a great question. How far is it for Andy and Mia to get from the pitch to the commentary area? They seem to move quickly to get to the broadcast. Right, at the racecourse, so when they go down and do the match day live, actually, yeah. No, I was going to say you can measure it by when they join me, but actually they do manage to get up before kick-off, don't they, usually? Or just about before kick-off. Racecourse, I'd say probably minute, less than a minute. We're in the second tier of the stand, the press box, although it's not like, you know, a big overhanging tier. It's just you've got a terrace which is seated at the front, and then you have to go down from our section, down some stairs, get down to ground level basically. So steps in the stands, then some stairs going down, concrete stairs going down, and then you're on the concourse underneath, and that is the ground level of the terrace below, and you go through a gate and you're at the pitch. So it's, I'd say about a minute, something like that. The issue, of course, is other people, because I would assume going up at the start of the match isn't too bad, because the majority of people are in their seats then. Not everyone, but the majority. Going down at half time, when people have decided to miss the last 30 seconds of the half to get in the front of the queue for a pint or a pie, that's more of a challenge, isn't it? So they're having to get through the crowds. They seem to do it very quickly. But I would say, following wind, nobody in the way, minute, maybe less. They're both athletes after all, aren't they? It was great when they did their first away one at Wycombe, wasn't it? It was a brilliant job. And that was quite an open plan setup. So it was quite quick. It was quite, the press box was quite low actually. And so and to the side, and we were filming to the side as well. So it was quite handy actually, I think, for them. Their only concern was where we were seated in the press box, their natural way to escape was to the left, because that was the direction they were filming in, and there was steps right there. But there were two seats between them and the aisle. So they were naturally a little concerned, is someone going to sit there? If those seats are empty, brilliant. They can just bolt and get to the pitch really quickly. I'd say 30 seconds max. If there was someone sitting there, though, I mean, like, take me for example. I'm broadcasting through half time. I'm not awkward. Obviously, if someone needs to get past me, I will try and just keep going and not make it sound like anything's happening, and just stand up and hopefully they can squeeze through between me and the seat. But I'd rather that didn't happen, and it's very, very rare that somebody would do that. So they were, naturally thinking, oh, I thought nobody's there, and what will we do if there is? Luckily, nobody was there, and so there was no issue. So you do get those, issues sometimes. Away games are very variable in terms of what the conditions are like, but they've done a good job, haven't they, getting down there and back up. Fair play. And they do a good job with Chris Malaband at the size of the pitch as well, I hasten to add. Now, Jamie Lightning, there's a bit of me thinks I've answered this already, so if so, skip a couple of minutes. Maybe it's not commentary. Jamie Lightning asks, is it the ref's decision whether a team forfeits a match or if it's postponed due to weather? What if the ref says the match can continue but the away team can't travel due to weather? That is a cracking question. It's the referee's decision, ultimately. Let's be honest. Teams can put pressure on the referee. The managers or some representative of them will be out on the pitch with the ref when there's a pitch inspection, and will often be saying, oh, we can't play on this, can we? And sometimes that can be down to your own interests. My understanding is that, and this has nothing to do with the weather, my understanding is that when the women's team played TNS in midweek, one of the floodlights isn't working at the Rock, and hasn't been for a while, and TNS, who have had a cup final the weekend after, were sort of arguing, well, we shouldn't really play, should we, if the floodlights out? It was really dark in that corner of the pitch, I've got to say as well. And as I was told, they were arguing that people won't be able to see the ball when it comes in, but that was a mistaken argument, wasn't it? Because the goalkeeper's in the light. If it was the other way around, I'd get that. Maybe find it hard to judge initially when the ball starts to come in, but I think it clutched at straws. That game was always going to go ahead, not least because I think that was a condition the referee was aware of beforehand anyway, and it had been cleared. So yeah, you might find teams, for whatever reason, you could have a lot of injuries, you've not played a game, pressing for a game to be called off or not, but it is the referee's decision. Now, you use the word forfeit a game. To forfeit a game, you would have to refuse to play, and you're going to get a punishment then. There was an instance early days of the Premier League, Middlesbrough. Oh gosh, I mean, basically, if you've got a problem with fulfilling a fixture, you've got to tell the authorities and get their sanction. Look at, again, the Welsh FA cancelling entire rounds of the Women's League because of yellow weather warnings or amber weather warnings. So just them saying, we're taking the decision out of your hands here, it's not safe, nobody's playing. Middlesbrough, I can't remember what the reason was. I think they had a lot of illness and they told the FA they weren't going to fulfil their fixture because their players didn't have enough players to put a strong team out, and the FA disagreed and said, no, you've got enough players to put a team out, you will play. That's just force majeure, isn't it? Unlucky, you got some players out, tough. And they refused to go, and so they got points deducted and they got relegated, and if they hadn't had the points deducted, they would have stayed up. So ultimately, referee's decision, you can make your case to the referee, but it's ultimately going to be the ref who makes the call, and if you attempt to go against it, you're going to get punished, possibly severely. Now then, back to Reading. Nevertheless asks, is Reading Stadium so big that it just looks like a low attendance? I see lots of empty seats. Yes, it wasn't a good look, was it? Lots of people sort of rattling around in a big stadium, it seemed. And Feral Sheep has replied, no, their capacity is around 24,000 and attendance last night was 11,000. That's 2,000 fewer than the sold-out racecourse every match. That's why we have to be careful with the size of our new stadium. I reckon 20,000 max is right for us. It needs to be a packed-out, intimidating cauldron. And Chip Pate also asks a similar question. This match at Reading and any match at MK Dons makes a persuasive case for moderately sized stadiums, even where there are frequent sellouts. Yes, fascinating point. I mean, I've got to say, Reading had an injection of money. The Medeski Stadium is its proper name, and John Medeski was a very wealthy businessman who was at the game, actually, the Wrexham game, in the boardroom, and he funded the stadium and he funded the club getting up and establishing themselves for a while in the Premier League. So that stadium was built with that in mind. So yeah, I think it's true. You need to cut your cloth according to your means. It's fascinating when you look at Wrexham's situation, because it's really hard to judge what is our upper limit, what is realistic, what can we expect, how far can we go, and how much will that drag people in. So it's a fascinating issue for us to address, and I'm glad we're not building it all in one go, a new stadium. I'm glad we're looking at it because we can gauge it maybe stand by stand and really look at exactly what we really need. I will say as well though, I totally agree with the idea about having an intimidating full stadium. I like that a lot. But also, and people have talked about this a lot as well, quite rightly, acoustics. The acoustics in the Medeski are really good. It sounded loud. It sounded really loud. And so that, I know, is something that populace are fully aware of and have a reputation for succeeding at. Yeah, because it was a good atmosphere. It sounded and felt more full than it was. So clearly that's a well-built stadium and they can get something out of it. But yeah, you're absolutely right. There's nothing worse than, it has a look than empty seats. But Reading, I think, would turn around and say, well, we were pretty much 50% capacity of a big crowd, midweek game. Ooh, I learned a fab fact, again from Garrett. Why was the game at 8 o'clock? Because Reading has 2 rush hours, which again would affect the attendance in a midweek game, which is, all clubs are more keen to get a game played on a Saturday, a home game, than to get it postponed and arranged on a Tuesday, because it does, unless your capacity isn't big enough, affect your attendance. So Reading has 2 rush hours. Now it's a big place, but the reason is it's also close to London, and it's on the M4 straight into London. So, and of course, it's on a direct fast train line to London as well. The one that runs right behind Maidenhead's ground, by the way, because Maidenhead's like one of the next stops along. So, they have a rush hour from people who work in and live in Reading, so it gets busy then. And then they have a rush hour of the people who've commuted to London to work, who are then arriving back in Reading a bit later. So, yeah, basically, they have 2 rush hours, so if they kick off at 8, it gives fans a better chance to get into the match. And apparently, I can't remember when. Was it when they moved to the Medeski? I was saying that they switched back to 7:45 and immediately were inundated with complaints and people saying, I've got a season ticket, but there's no way I can get to a midweek match because I'm stuck in one of the second rush hour or whatever. So, yeah, my fan facts. Yeah, it's fan facts, let's be honest here. Now then, Todd asks, has Rosie Hughes been injured? I feel like I haven't seen her playing as many minutes as usual. No and yes. She's not been injured, but yes, you're right, she hasn't played as many minutes as usual, and a combination of reasons for that. I mean, let's be honest, the main reason is how spectacular Ava Suckley and Abby Inden have been as a combination. I mean, it's the old, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, isn't it really? They're a hell of a pair of strikers. They work so well together and we're winning games hand over fist, so you know that's purring away nicely. Now, Rosie's not been injured, and while, okay, she's not scoring crazy amounts of goals, she's making huge contributions to the team, and that's whether she starts or not. Her movement is so good. She's so good at receiving the ball as well, and carrying the ball forwards, and releasing the ball at the right time in transition. So she is a key player for us, especially, and if she's on the bench, well, we saw this against Cardiff, didn't we? The game we won at Cardiff. She can come on, and then, well, the classic example, the advantage rather that a quick striker has of, against tiring defenders, you've got a better chance of outpacing them. So doing a Stephen Fletcher job, if you will. But then also, it's the fact that she works ever so hard. So Cardiff are looking to get the ball forwards, are looking to progress the ball. They don't really want to do what I talked about earlier and launch it long. They want to try and pass it through because they're a good footballing team and they're sticking to their strengths. But Hughes and whoever's up there with her are working like hell to put them under pressure, and Hughes will chase a lost cause just so the Cardiff defender hasn't got time to turn around and will have to pass backwards. So she has that wonderful quality as well of reading the game well and having terrific energy. And she's also been scoring goals off the bench, isn't she, as well? So the way I look at it is what a remarkable luxury to have 3 strikers like them who are all very, very high quality and can all make massive contributions. Nice position to be in, isn't it? And, oh gosh, Leapin' Leapus said, why were you speaking Spanish, Mark? Yes, there was an attempt to speak Spanish before the Reading game began, and that was a message for David Mardones, who was one of the Patagonian supporters who came over from Argentina last season, and his friend, I've forgotten his first name, his second name was Peret Lindo, and he'd come to a match, and I didn't realise, I saw the message too late, and I wanted to meet up and say hi. I was really gutted, and so I said I'd make a mention for them, so I thought I'll do that, that'll be a bit of fun. My Spanish, as you heard, Leaping Leapers, is not great, to say the least, so I do apologise for any Spanish speaker who heard me doing that. It was pretty grim, but I'll keep persevering. I'll keep going, not least because the Wrexham AFC España account holder is hoping to come over soon to a Wrexham game, so I need to practice so I can have a coffee with him and I can say, muy rico. And Wrexham fan, to round off the podcast, says, have I been under a rock, or is Perry a new addition to the women's team? Well, no and no. Well, I say no and no. I mean, I don't know your whereabouts. You may be under a rock. I'm not stalking you. It's just a rumour. But Perry, who was on the bench at Swansea, of all games, at Swansea, is not a new addition. She's a youth player, Sienna Perry. She's a good midfielder. She's got real promise, and she's only 16. We signed her in the summer, or brought her in, I should say, really, shouldn't I? From the FAW Girls Academy North. So basically, the Welsh FA have an academy. So 99% shows based at Colliers Park. I'll check with Lucy Scott. If anybody knows, she knows. So they develop talent. There's another one in the south, and basically she played for them and developed for them, and then she's now moved across and signed for Wrexham and is a regular in the under-19s team. I think it's 7 games, 2 goals, if my memory serves me right. So she's a real prospect, and yes, so that's why she was on the bench. But she's not a new signing. She's a youth player coming through, and we've got a lot, as I've said before, of good youth players coming through. One of whom I owe an apology to, Emma. Oh God, I've done it again. Emma Burnham, talented centre back. I've spoken about in podcasts and has played a couple of substitute appearances. I, for some reason, got Southern in my head. I've no idea where from, and I'm sure I've been calling her Emma Southern when we've been talking. I think I have anyway. So if I have, I need to profoundly apologise to Emma Burnham because I'm getting it wrong. It reminds me, let's finish on a pointless story, shall we? When I was in college, a lad who played with me, the best player I think, well he was, no question, best player I ever played with, was a lad called Dovan Williams, and he was very talented. He was captain of Wales Schoolboys. He was with Manchester United playing in their youth team. Really, really, really good player. He was a defender, usually, or defensive midfielder, and he scored in a Man United youth game, and so that meant it was a bit of a rarity for him. He got his name in a full Man United programme. So the youth roundup, the goal was scored by, they got his name wrong. His name was Dovan Williams, and they gave his name as Dylan Williams, like Dylan Thomas. Yeah. So Dylan, not an arrogant person at all, and the most humble lads you'd ever meet. Wasn't going to make a fuss of it, but when he came into training the next week, the coach was really pleased for him and said, "Hey, you got your name in the programme, isn't that brilliant?" And Dovan just casually said, "Yeah, it's a shame you got the name wrong, didn't they?" And the coach was, fair play to the coach. I can't have this. This must not stand. So he said, "I'm going to go and see the people who do the programme and sort this out." So he did. And the next Man United first team home game, the programme had an apology. They said, "We're really sorry, but we mentioned the scorer of the goal in the youth team, and we got his name wrong. We said he was Dylan Williams, but he isn't. He's Doved Williams." Well, that's wrong as well, isn't it? His name was Dovan. So the coach again, same scenario. "Oh, I'm glad they carried that apology, Dovan." Yeah, they got it wrong again, didn't they? Coach, "I can't believe this. I've got to sort this out." So the next home game, the Man United programme, another apology. "We really can't believe this. We're so sorry. We got his name wrong again." So, right, to compensate him, his name is Dovan Williams. Correct. That's right. And here's a picture of him. And indeed, underneath Dovan's name was a picture of Welsh Youth Man United player Clayton Blackmore. They got the picture wrong. The next training session, I think Dovan and the coach agreed to just let it lie. Understandably. So I'm very sorry, Emma Burnham, if I called you anything else. I rather suspect that when you're a regular in the first team, I'll have your name well burnt into my mind. Right, that's it for now, chaps. Dragonheart. Oh, Final Whistle Weekly. I'm so sorry. Final Whistle Weekly is coming up later. In the meantime, prepare yourselves for the weekend. A couple more big matches coming up. I'm Mark Griffiths from Wrexham AFC. Adios, muchachos. Hasta luego.